of all, I want to thank Rabbi Zushka for bringing me down here. We've been talking about this for, what is it, about over a year.
Over a year, yes.
And in all kinds of circumstances, and whatever happened, until now. I also want to thank Rabbi Rebbetzin for hosting me for Shabbos. The food was delicious. I think I ate about 25-30 miles worth. And of course, we always have to thank Hashem. It's interesting, this picture here. Last year I was running the New York City Marathon. I was at First Avenue in Manhattan. I listen to music when I run. I have a special headset. I'll show you a picture of it later. And most of the time in New York you can't hear anything because of the screaming and yelling of all the runners and all the crowd. It's very, very loud. But there are some spots where it's quiet. And I'm running on First Avenue and I saw a sign on a barricade. It said, this sign, thank you Hashem. And I'm listening to my music. I have 500 songs on my playlist playing randomly. And as I passed this sign, the song "Thank You Hashem" came onto my. So we always have to remember we have to thank Hashem for everything. So that's. We'll start right away with the Torah source. We're going to talk about first the Torah sources and all the sources for exercise in Judaism, and where it all comes from, and the importance of it from the Torah perspective. A few weeks ago, we read the Parsha of Eschanon, and the highlight of Parsha of Eschanon is the Ten Commandments. Second time that these Ten Commandments are read in the Torah. And it's a big thing, everybody stands up and listens. But there's another pasuk, another verse in that Parsha that's sort of like glossed over. Nobody really notices it. It's called Shmarya Richler, and you shall watch yourselves very well. And our sages established that this is the source for taking care of oneself and making sure that we watch our bodies, because the Jewish body is very important. There's another source, sort of a hint in the Mishnah in Shabbos, where it talks about what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do on Shabbos, and one of the things you're not allowed to do is vigorous exercise. So based on that, we could say, well, then during the week you probably are, you're supposed to do exercise. If you're not allowed to do it on Shabbos, then you're supposed to do it during the week. So that's sort of a source of the Mishnah. But the main source that we have is the Rambam. The Rambam, as you know, is a doctor. Maimonides was a doctor. And he wrote the Sefer Mishneh Torah, which we learn every day. Some people learn one chapter a day, some people learn 3. And in the laws of daily living, which is at the beginning, the Rambam outlines the requirement to take care of oneself. And he says in the first part here, says that maintaining a healthy body is very important. And without a healthy body, we can't serve Hashem properly. So we have to make sure that our body is healthy, and we have to make sure to do things to ensure that our body is healthy. The second part, the Rambam says, he says that one should only eat 75% of what they need, or what they think they need. And he doesn't give a reason for this, but we now know the reason. The reason is because a person, when he eats, he only realizes that he's full 15 to 20 minutes after he finishes eating. Because the brain only registers the fullness not 15 to 20 minutes later. So the person's eating, he thinks he's not full, but really he is. I mentioned this once to a friend of mine in Montreal. He says, that's interesting. He says, last week I was sitting and eating supper. Halfway through my meal, phone rings, I have to take a phone call. I come back 20 minutes later, I realize I'm not hungry anymore. So that's one of the keys. Today we call it portion control. But that's, in Torah, it says that we should only eat 75% of what we eat. And the second part of this same law, or same section, the Rambam says we should do something sweat-bearing in the morning before we eat. And he's not talking about going to a sauna. So it means exercise. We're supposed to do some exercise. So right there, and it's interesting to note that these two things, the 75% and sweat-bearing exercise, are in the same halacha, the same law, which seems to indicate that they're two halves, they're one thing. You need both. You can't do one or the other. In my case, I used to do a lot of treadmill and power walking, and I was the guy that was looking at, oh look, 700 calories, now I can have 3 extra knishes. And in fact, the Maggid of the Jewish once told his son about, he wanted him to stay healthy, that a small hole in the body makes a big hole in the neshama. A person cannot perform his service to the Creator properly if he's not healthy. He has to be healthy. God gave us a body, and He gave us the obligation to take care of it. So we have to do things to make sure that that body remains healthy. There's Rebbetzin Korf, Pinya Korf, Rabbi Pinya Korf, he was a big mashpia in New York. His wife worked in the Beis Yaakov in Borough Park, and she once wrote to the Rebbe that she didn't have time to take care of herself. And the Rebbe wrote her back, and they highlighted it there, that watching one's health is a mitzvah like every other mitzvah. It's like putting on film. There's no difference between watching one's health and putting on film, lighting Shabbos candles, or eating kosher, or whatever it is. It's a mitzvah in and of itself, and it has to, and you have to make sure to take care of yourself. And she should tell her people, the administration of Beis Yaakov, that they have to make sure she has time to take care of herself. So that's the importance of taking care of themselves. Now, we know it's a mitzvah, and because it's a mitzvah, we have it gives us the power to do the mitzvah. But God does not give us something that we cannot. God does not give us something to do that we cannot do. It's what we call an asinus kred. It gives us the power. If we have a mitzvah, we are able to accomplish it. God knows we can accomplish it. Mitzvahs have all kinds of properties. Like tefillin has to be written on parchment, and that's 4 parchment. And now we're coming up to Rosh Hashanah. We have the shofar, how to blow the shofar, how to make the shofar, all these kinds of different things. Sukkahs, how to build a sukkah, what it looks like, how high it can be, how low. They all have different parameters. All mitzvahs have parameters. They all share one thing in common, though. They all have what we call the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. There's that little voice in our head that's telling us, don't do it. And it comes up with all kinds of excuses how to make sure to try to get us not to do the mitzvah. And one of the biggest Yetzer Haras, the biggest voice in our head is, I have no time. I don't have time, I can't do exercise, I'm too busy, and these responsibilities, and all this kind of stuff. The truth is, we do have time. I can't tell you how to do time management. I'm what we would call a world-class procrastinator. So I can't tell you about time management. What I can tell you is that the exercise that you do in the morning, let's say, a half an hour exercise, time you spend exercising in the morning, will translate into 1 hour saved during the day. Your day will be better, you'll be more alert, you'll have more time, you're mentally alert, you feel better. Your half an hour of exercise really translates not into an expense, but it's an investment. And you gain a half an hour, so you're gaining 1/2 hour during the day. And as our official Leibovich, I'll tell you more about him later, also known as Fred Lebo, said that doing exercise in the morning gives the ability to change, to have 25 hours in a 24 hours. And it's 100% true. I can tell you that from my own experience. Doing exercise, I run in the morning, and my day is much better because of that. I'm more alert, I think better, everything works better. So you're gaining time, you're not losing time. So that Yetzer Hara, that voice that says I have no time, this is what you have to tell. So as I said, spending half an hour. I wrote this once and somebody made a meme out of it and passed it around the internet. So that half an hour that you're spending is really 1 hour gain. I'm sometimes reluctant to tell people about spending time on exercise, especially young people. They have children, they have responsibilities, they have to take them to school, they have all kinds of things. This fellow here standing next to me at the start of the New York City Marathon last year, his name is again, Mendel Yarmish. He has 5 kids. They're 6 and under. And last year, he ran with me the New York City Marathon. One doesn't get up in the morning one day and decide to run a marathon. It takes months and months of training. He did it. So there are ways to make for people to make time to do exercise. It's not outside the realm of impossible. And as I say here, I don't have time to run, I make time. Then there's another voice that comes up called the Yetzer Hara. It says, I can't, and I'm guilty of that too. When I started my journey, which I'll tell you about later, I remember seeing somebody running down the street. First of all, I thought it was crazy. And it was somebody from the community, a young guy, who's running down. I remember clearly, I was in the car with my kids and my wife, and we were riding along, and we see this guy running, and I said, you know, this guy he's practicing for a marathon. And I said, I remember telling my kids, I said, I could never do that. There's no way, I can't do that. I won't say anything. This young man here, his name is Terry Fox. Terry Fox is a hero in Canada. I don't know if you've heard about him here. But he lost his leg to cancer. He was at the time, I think, 20 or 18 or 20. And he decided one day that he's going to run across Canada to raise money for cancer research. And I'm mentioning him today because today in Canada, it's September the 15th, is Terry Fox Run Day. There's Terry Fox runs all over the country. And interestingly enough, he's from Burnaby, British Columbia. And you've heard of Michael J. Fox? Mm-hmm. Michael J. and we mention him later, but Michael J. Fox is also from Burnaby. They went to the same school, they're not the same age, but together, two of them have raised over $2 billion for research. He didn't make it across Canada. He left on April 12, 1980. He ran for 143 days. He ran the equivalent of 1 marathon a day for 143 days. For a total of 3,339 miles. Wow. Unfortunately, on September 1st, 1980, cancer came back, and he passed away in June 1981. But there is no such thing as a cancer. I'm too old. Well, I'm 68. I started running when I was 59. Wow. And I'm 68. So you're not too old. This is Anne. Meet Anne. Anne is somebody I see every once in a while running in the park. Anne is 82. She runs in the park. She runs. This was at the New York City Marathon Expo last year, and I saw this guy that said, old man. I went over to him, you're not an old man. He's run like 25 marathons. He's 70-something. So you're not an old man. I didn't know while we're running. I said, you got to take that old man thing out. As I always tell people, getting old is inevitable, being old is a choice. So you're not, you can start exercising at any age. It doesn't really matter how old you are. And I constantly, people write on running groups that they're this many years old, and I always put a note there, editor's note, please remove the word old. In fact, the French have a better way of representing age than we do. We always say, I'm 68 years old, I'm this many years old. In French, my age, I say in French, j'ai 68 ans. I have 68 years. In Yiddish, I don't know, Rabbi, how to translate this, but in Yiddish we call that a deher. It's like, I have 68 years, I'm not 68 years old. I should be learning another Yetzer Hara. Yeah. I should be learning, this Yetzer Hara is a religious one. The Rebbe has it in Hayom Yom, he describes the Yetzer Hara with it's wearing a silk, kapot, silk, he comes to you know, the half an hour in the morning that you're running or doing, you should be learning. You should be going to a shiur. What are you doing this exercise for? It doesn't make sense. You should be learning. Well, that's what headsets are for. And podcasts. And here's an idea, Rabbi. Why don't you have a walking shiur? You can all get rid of headsets. The rabbi can have a microphone. You can go walking. What's wrong with that? So whatever, you gotta do something where
Rabbi Hanoka's hiking and walking class is starting this Tuesday.
By the way, this is the headset that I use when if you go out and use a headset. These are called shocks. Only use this. They sit outside the ear. They work with home conduction, so you can hear your environment. You don't want to run or do anything with one of these. I see them all the time with these big headphones where they're sitting there, walking or running, and they can't hear anything that's going on. Yeah. So this allows you to hear your environment in case some car is creeping up on you, you'll know. Here's another one. No, it's predisposed, genetics. I was once running, this goes back probably 5 years ago, and I met a guy ran up next to me, and we started having a conversation, which is, if you're going to do running, it's very important to know that you should be able to run and have a conversation at the same time. Otherwise, you're exerting yourself too much. But anyway, so we're talking 15, 20 minutes. He was from Vancouver, here in British Columbia, and he was about 5 years older than me, so I guess now he's 73 or 74. And we're talking, and I tell him why I started running, and he tells me why he started running. And he starts describing, or starts telling me about his family, their predispositions. And I really felt bad for the guy, because he was talking to me, telling me all about his brother with this problem, and this uncle died from that, and type 2 diabetes, and I mean, his whole family was all kinds of issues with all his relatives. And he says, except for one person, me. And he's predisposed to all kinds of stuff because it's all in his family. But he started running at 42, and he hasn't had any problems. So predisposition doesn't mean preordained. It just means it's there, it has to be watched, but exercise will help to ensure that doesn't manifest itself. So this is what we don't know. Hashem gives us years. We don't know how many there are, but we don't run for the years. We run to add life to the years. We want to add life to whatever years we have. We don't know exactly how long we have, but we can get into a philosophical discussion about it, which I'll leave for later if you want to talk about it. But the point is that I don't run to add years to my life. I run to add life to my years. So when we talk about predisposition and preordination, all this kind of stuff, exercise, we must remember all the time that it's a mitzvah. And it's a mitzvah whatever the case is. Last year, before I translate this, but last year, when the cycle of Rambam was starting, and at that point, not the one that just happened now, but the previous one where the 1 chapter a day and the 3 chapter a day coincided. So I wrote a couple articles. I wrote some articles before about some of the stuff that I'm talking about, and I wrote these 2 articles. The first one I wrote I wrote them in conjunction with when the cycle got to the laws of daily living, which I spoke about earlier. And I said that the first article was that it's a mitzvah, because it's a mitzvah, as the Rebbe once told us, if the Rambam put something in his sefer, then it's a mitzvah, it's an obligation. So I wrote about that, and it is an obligation, and because of the mitzvah, we have the ability to perform it, and I gave some advice about exercise and all that kind of stuff. So that was the first article, all about the mitzvah of doing exercise and eating healthy and all of that. Then I wrote a second article, and the second article, the subject was the Yetzer Haras, and I talked about what I just talked about now in that article. And for me, it wasn't easy to write those articles. I'm not a rabbi. My father always told me being a rabbi is not a job for a Jewish boy. I'm not a rabbi, I'm not a mashpia, and so it's not easy for me to write these articles. In fact, most of these articles are written while I'm running. So I wrote the articles and I put them in some of the Jewish websites and publications. And a little while later, I was preparing a third article, and somebody comes to me in shul, one of my friends in shul, and he says, "Shmarya, I want to show you something I just found." And he picks some letters from the Rebbe, he picks up this and shows me this letter. And the first paragraph in this letter says, "It's understood that everybody in this world is here because of Hashem's will, and he has a shlichus to perform in this world, to do good in this world, and therefore there's a mitzvah of nishmartim oiv that one should watch carefully their body. And it's understood, it's pashut, that we have the kayach and the strength to do this shlichus." So that, for me, corresponded to the first article I wrote. It's exactly the words that I wrote in my first article. I didn't know about this letter before I wrote it. Second paragraph. From there it's understood that the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, will come and it will try to prevent you in every single way to perform this mitzvah. That was the second article I wrote. So I felt as if the Rebbe reached out through the Igros to me and validated what I had just written. I can tell you that the next day's run was fantastic. After I saw that. So there's a source, the Rebbe is telling you, and in fact this letter, I was speaking to the head of Friendship Circle, and he says he thinks that letter was written to his grandfather, Ben Zion Shem Tov, who was notorious for not taking care of himself. And I found out later that his son, one of his sons, Rabbi Shem Tov in Detroit, the Baal Shem Tov used to do his Rambam on a treadmill. He would walk on a treadmill and do his Rambam. So how did I do it? How did I do what I did? I'll tell you a little bit about where I was in 2015. I was overweight. I had very bad gout. I would get very bad gout in my toe. If anybody's had them, they know what I'm talking about. I had severe acid reflux, and my sugar numbers were elevated. And I used to go to the doctor, and the doctor would warn me. And before you go to the doctor, you spend 2 weeks and you eat better. Because you're scared of what's going to happen. And you go to the doctor, and then he tells you, you have to watch what you eat, and you have to this, and your blood pressure is a little bit high, and it goes in this ear, and then it comes out the other one. And then for the next week, so instead of eating 6 knishes a day, you eat 2 knishes a day. We all know how it is. That's how it was. So I was at the doctor in 2015 in December, and he was constantly watching my blood pressure. And he says, what you need to do now, I want you to get one of those monitors. And every day, twice a day, you have to take your blood pressure for a month and record it. And then come back in February and show me the numbers. January, whatever it was. So I did that, and I went back in January and he looked at it and he said, you didn't record it right, I want you to do it again. So I did it again. March 20th, and at that time, I was one of the guys, let me tell you a little more about where I was. I was one of the guys that went to a wedding, and of course you go to a wedding, anybody's been to a wedding, especially in Chabad, they start late. Right? So you have to eat something before you get there. You can't go to a wedding, you don't know when they're going to start serving. So you have something to eat. Then you go to the wedding and they have the smorgasbord. And if you're like me, you go to the ladies' side because that's where they really have the good stuff. And you load up. You use a little plate because there's going to be main dish. So you use a little plate, and you load up over there. And then there's the chuppah, and then you go to the main dinner, and you wash. After all, it's a suda, it's a mitzvah. You have to wash at the wedding. And then there's stuff on the table, so you eat some of that. There's the entree, the fish, the soup, and then there's all the finger food, and you're eating that and all that. And then the chassan and kala come in and you dance, so now you have exercise. So now you sit down to the main dish, and of course you have to go get say l'chaim to the host, the father-in-law, the father, the husband, and you have to say l'chaim, and there's something to eat over there too. Right? And then the main dish comes out, and then there's the dessert and the sweet table. And I was the guy that used to sit next to the religious one that didn't eat out of his house. So I would tell him, you take the main dish, and I would eat the second main dish. So that's where I was. And during the week, my weakness was, we call them sandwich cookies. What do you call them here? Oreos? That was my weakness. I could sit down to one of these big trays of this sandwich cookies with milk, you twist them out to lick out, right? And the milk and the whole thing and the dip in the coffee, I would sit down to a full, not the little tray, the big tray. And then I would eat that, and I'd get halfway through, I'd feel nauseous, and I'd continue eating. That's where I was. I was not watching what I was doing. I was doing power walking, but not regularly. I would, when it came to the winter, and I had to go into treadmills, so the treadmill wasn't working yet, so the whole winter would go by, procrastinating. So I wasn't a regular exerciser. In fact, one time I got such a bad bout of acid reflux, I thought I was having a heart attack. It was so bad, I went to the hospital. I went to the emergency room, and it wasn't, thank God, it wasn't a heart attack. But I remember when I was lying there, they had me hooked up to a blood pressure cuff, and he was taking my blood pressure 5 minutes, and the doctor came in, and they were residents. He came in with like a crew of 6-7 people, and he asked me if I did an exercise, and I said, well, I do. And I remember the look on his face, and I read it, and it said, if you were doing exercise, you wouldn't be here. And it's true. I've mentioned this to doctors and to everybody, the health professionals. I was once running down the street right in front of the hospital. There was an ambulance parked there, and the 2 ambulance drivers gave me the thumbs up. So I turned around and said to them, I said, if everybody was doing what I did, and everybody in North America was doing what I did, or something like what I'm doing, hospitals would be half empty. And they said, you're 100% right. And all the doctors I've spoken to, all the health professionals, there are so many things today that are preventable. Type 2 diabetes, all kinds of things that we're getting are because of lifestyle. It has nothing to do with getting old or something or anything like that. So that's where I was. I was a doctor, March 20th, 2016. Today I call that date my health anniversary. Because I filled a prescription for blood pressure medication on that day, but I didn't want to take those pills. I really didn't. In my mind, this is what I saw. I'm going to need that, right? Because pills give birth. You take one pill, then it has a side effect, and the doctor told me, says, I'm giving you this pill, it's a low dose. If it doesn't control your blood pressure, I'm going to give you a higher dose. So I didn't want to take pills. I really didn't. It's just a slippery slope. I don't know where I'd be today had I not done what I did. So at the time, I decided right then and there that I had to take care of myself. So I read that running, I was doing some power walking, as I said. I had a route of 2.5 miles. I read that running revs the metabolism better than walking. I decided I'm going to mix some running in with my walking. I still had in my head, I can't run. There's no way I could run, but I could do a little bit of running while I walk. I'll run a little bit, then I'll walk, I'll run a little bit, and then I'll walk. And I also knew this, that fitness, that exercise only represents 20% of losing weight. You need to lose weight for fitness, so it's only 20%. The rest you have is intake. So I had to look at what I was doing as far as eating is concerned. So we'll start with the eating part because that's the big part. How do we eat better to make sure, in my case, I wanted to lose weight. Not everybody needs to lose weight, but they still should eat better, and they still should do exercise. I'm not talking about just doing this for losing weight. Of course, everybody wants to lose weight. And the truth is, I don't like to use the word lose because I lost 75 pounds. I don't want to say I lost it, I said I got rid of it, because I don't want to find it again. I lose money in the stock market, that I want to find. not the 75 pounds. So the first thing was I did not go on a diet. Diets do not work. I mean, 95% of people who go on diets fail. So that means the diet industry in the United States in 2023 was worth $90 billion with a B. 95% of people who go on diets fail. So I didn't go on a diet. And I remember my mother, the big thing then was Weight Watchers. Remember Weight Watchers?
Yeah.
Remember?
She's a lifetime member.
The rhubarb, the stuff she used to eat, and they used to go once a week for their weigh-ins. I mean, it was a whole thing. But the bottom line is the diets don't work. Right? And to drive it home, let's say you decided one day that you're going to jump out and you want to do some skydiving. And you're going to jump out of an airplane. So you don't just go up in an airplane and jump out, you go to a school. Right? You have to go to lessons. What if it said that on the door to the... Would you jump out of an airplane? So why are you going on a diet? So the first thing I did was I cut down on vitamin K. I like to use the word cut down and not cut out, because there's diets you cut out. They tell you, cut this out. I have friends that I cut out my carbs. I said, you're crazy, the body needs carbs. You can't cut out. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
I know somebody that went on one of these crazy diets, lost a tremendous amount of weight. He was eating only certain things. And of course, you can't maintain that forever. And after it comes back, and the more. And today, unfortunately, they have something called Ozempic. Somebody asked me, what do you think of Ozempic? I said, are you a type 2 diabetic? If you're a type 2 diabetic, yeah, you need something like that. But to take it to lose 20 pounds, do people realize that Ozempic you have to take for life once you get off it, the stuff and the side effects? It's terrible. It's terrible when they're advertising it. I don't know. So cut down on what's vitamin K? Very clever. Vitamin K. Not to say that I don't have some vitamin K once in a while, although I get to find a really good knish, like they used to make them.
New York, gotta go to New York.
Yeah, I know, but it's still not the same.
Really?
Yeah, it's not the same.
You lost your taste for it.
Maybe I lost my taste. Maybe they're using, since they used to use real mashed potatoes and fried onions.
I
Right.
remember that.
Now it's not like, now it's powdered.
Ah.
Not the same. But anyway, the bottom line is, I'm not telling you don't eat these things. I eat potato chips once in a while. The problem is, the issue is the dose. How much am I eating? If I'm eating potato chips 3 times a day, then that's a problem. But if I'm eating potato chips once a week, it's not the end of the world. You can't cut things out. The only thing I really cut out, that I'll tell you to cut out, is sugar sodas. Those are terrible. There's
What about
Coke.
Diet Coke?
What about what?
Diet Coke is okay.
Diet Coke is even worse. And you know what's even worse than those? Sports drinks.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sports drinks are terrible. I was at my grandson, I went to visit in camp. A child, an adult should have 30 grams of added sugar a day. A child is 25 grams. A sports drink has 25 to 30, it's like a Coke. And the kids in camp are drinking this like water.
Healthy.
Healthy. Then the sports drink manufacturers have you convinced that if you're drinking sports drinks, you're an athlete. You're not. I'm an athlete. I don't drink sports drinks. When I run a marathon, and the kids' parents in camp will tell you, well, they're running it off, they're working it off. I run a marathon, I'm expending more energy in 26 miles than they are in 2 weeks. I don't drink sports drinks. I have, for my electrolytes, I have capsules, I drink water. I just found out recently, in the football games where they have these tubs and it says Gatorade on them? And at the end of the game, they dump it over the coach, you know, it says Gatorade. Apparently, it's not Gatorade in there at all. It's something else altogether. If you give Gatorade, it's just paint out the name there. So, sports drinks, Coke, all that. If I'm going to tell you to cut out something, that's the only thing I really say, cut out, do not drink that stuff. It's poison. And the kids are drinking it and they're setting themselves up for obesity and type 2 diabetes from all that sugar.
Yeah.
It's terrible. So anyway, so the bottom line is cut down, and don't cut out. Another thing, another thing to do that I did was reduce portion size. To eat less, I tricked myself. Instead of using a dinner size plate, I use an entree size plate. So I tricked myself into eating less. And I don't know if you know this, but in Europe, plate sizes are smaller than here. So they know something. And here's something else that I want to do. So when I talk about eating, you can read that there. So that's the bottom line. You got to eat better and eat less of what you really think you need. And another thing about Europe, this is an interesting thing I just saw last week. Look at that. Look at the ingredients, the difference between the US version of ketchup and the UK version.
Or is it better?
Maybe it tastes better, but that's the difference. I mean, we're getting so much stuff in our food, so much processed food and garbage.
And natural flavors. What is a natural?
What's that?
What is a natural flavor?
Yeah.
Grilled tomatoes.
So if you're trying to eat better to get rid of some weight, how you need to have a little bit of a mental in your head. You have to do something to help you do that. And one of the things people do is they say, "Oh, I got to lose 50 pounds." No, you don't need to lose 50 pounds. You need to lose 5. You need to lose 5. Then when you get to 5, okay, now we need to lose 5 again. That's how I did it. When I started, I weighed, according to the doctor, I asked him what was my highest, he said 225. It was probably 230 because, like I said, 2 weeks before I went to the doctor. So I was probably around 220, 230. I did not have first of all, when I started, I didn't have in my head a number of how much I wanted to lose. I didn't say to myself, Shmarya, you got to lose 75 pounds, because it never would have happened. I said, okay, I'm at 225, let's see what happens when I get to 220. Okay, I'm at 220, let's see where I'm at. And I did it like that. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. I remember at one point in the process, I don't remember what number I was at, but the scale didn't move for 6 months.
Wow.
That was the hardest part for me. But so I guess my body was saying, I don't want to do this anymore. And it wasn't letting me. I didn't change the way I was eating. I just had to train my body to understand that I have to go more. So that's how I did it. And I learned that from my running. I'll tell you, running a marathon or running any distance, don't think about how much you have to run. Think about how much you did. So I remember I ran a marathon in June, and normally in most marathons they have mile markers which count down. Which count up, sorry. So it tells you how much you did. And it tells you where you're at. So it'll tell you how much you did. So say, 10K, 15K, 30K, whatever. This one, when we came to the first sign, it said 41K. In other words, how much I got left. And I remember, we were all laughing. We were a whole group of us there. I yelled out, I said, is this some kind of joke? And we're all laughing, like, why did they tell us, what are they telling us? They should tell us we already did 1 kilometer, not that we have 41 to go. So it's the same thing with weight. We want to do the exact same thing. Think about how much I've already done, not how much I have to go. And do it in small chunks. That worked for me. So that's the eating part. So that's the 20%. But even the 20% that I showed before, it's really more, because when you exercise, you somehow automatically want to do better in all areas of your life, not just in your physical exercise. So it helps the eating part too, because your mind is more attuned to what's going on in your body. So when you do exercise, one thing I will tell you, if you're going to do something vigorous like running or heavy duty sports, talk to your doctor first to make sure that you're okay, that he gives you the okay to do it. Start slow. Don't try to bite off more than you can chew. Some people, they get into it and they run like this, that, gung-ho, and then it peters out because they can't maintain that. And set a modest goal. When I started my running, I had this route of 2.5 miles, and I couldn't run from here to the rabbi's house without huffing and puffing. Okay? And so what I did was, I would run and get to the point where I was huffing and puffing. And this is true of any exercise. When I'm talking about running because that's what I do, but in any exercise, whether it's swimming, biking, whatever it is. So I would run as much as I could, and then I would start walking. That was my intent. And I played with the telephone poles and the parking meters. I use them as guides. I said, I'm going to run to this telephone pole today, then I'm going to walk to the next one, and then I'm going to run to the next one. And as time went on, the gaps, the walking gaps became less. I was able to run more. And after, I don't remember how long, I was able to actually run the whole route without stopping. Now that's one of my favorite telephone poles because that one is exactly 1 mile from my house. Ask any runner, they'll tell you in any direction where it is 1 mile from your house. And that's the one where I ran my first uninterrupted mile. It's not that pole. So as I say, before I thought running, for me, I could never do that, it's impossible. I'll never be able to do it, and then one day I actually ran the mile. And in fact, the word impossible is really a contraction of the word two words, impossible, right? So I worked hard, and I ran a lot. I didn't become crazy right away. That took a little bit, but I decided that after I started doing 5Ks and 10Ks, I decided I wanted to run a half marathon, which is 13.1 miles. And one day, on a Sunday, I used to do long runs on Sundays, so I'm sacrificing my long run for this. I did 9 miles on Friday. I went to the Rose Bowl. It was very nice. Growing up, I always, January 1st was a highlight. We would watch the Rose Bowl parade, and I remember watching it in black and white. So we didn't see all the colors then, but then I got a color TV and it was like a whole different ballgame. And I remember growing up, I was always wondering, how did they keep those floats from going off into the sides? And on the way here from the airport, Zushi showed me the red line. So now at 68, I finally figured out how they would keep the floats going straight. And I posted it on my Facebook, and my son-in-law's mother wrote, she says, I was also wondering how they did that. I said, there must be a little window. Anyway, so it's the red line. Now I know I'm Baruch Hashem, now I know.
I sleep well.
I can speak well. So I ran, I did one Sunday, I had a 10-mile route planned, and I had an extra 3 miles that I had mapped out, and I decided if I feel good at 10 miles, I'm going to see what's going to happen. And I did it. I did that 13.1 miles. It was the first time. And I was happy with that. And then one day I was running, and I got to my 13 miles, and I said, what happens if I try to run a little bit more? And I did, and I ran 16 miles that day, and then that was the germ planted in my head that I can run a marathon. Little did I know what I was getting into, but I started training and running longer distances, and in June 2000, I started running in March 20th, 2016. In June 2018, I crossed the finish line on my first full marathon. And subsequent to that, I followed that with another 5. The middle one is the latest in June. There's 3 New Yorks, 1 Montreal. So I've done those, and in Mitzvah Hashem in 7 weeks, I'll be in New York again for my 7th. So when it comes to exercise, I'm not going to tell you to become a runner. I mean, I'd be happy if you did. I can give you all kinds of advice. But do anything. It doesn't have to be running. It just has to be something. You have to keep moving. You can swim, you can walk, you can power walk, get the blood moving, play sports, whatever it is, you have to keep moving. You can't be sedentary. Unfortunately today, one of the other Yetzer that people tell me is that the Rambam outlined all his in the laws of daily living. He outlined the diet, and he outlined all kinds of things. And times have changed. Times have changed, and it's true. The diet that the Rambam outlines will not work today. And in fact, I saw a transcript of the Rebbe speaking with, I think, the Ger Rebbe, talking about exactly that. The Rambam's diet would not work today physically, but the spiritual aspects of it still exist. Exactly what that means, I don't know. I can leave that to the rabbi, but the point is that certain things don't work. But the underlying principle of exercise as a mitzvah, precisely because times have changed, we need it today. Because today, the times of the Rambam, there weren't cars, there weren't scooters, there weren't computers, people working online, sitting down for 9 hours straight working on a computer. They were walking, they were active. There was a farming society. Everybody worked in some way. Today we sit around and do nothing. So precisely because times have changed, we need more exercise today and more walking. Another thing somebody once told me was, I have a friend, he exercised and he died young. Right? Well, think about this. I mean, first of all, it's a mitzvah, so there's nothing to do with your friend. It's my mitzvah. It's not nothing to do with that. I'm on Mifsaim, and I'm trying to convince people to put up a mezuzah. And I tell them, mezuzah is good for security in your house, right? And that's one of the lines. And this guy will tell me, well, I have a friend who has mezuzahs all over his house, and he was robbed 3 times. So those arguments don't make sense. So the same thing here, it doesn't make sense. Just because your friend exercised and dropped dead at whatever age, doesn't mean that you shouldn't exercise. You have the mitzvah. So whatever exercise you can do. It doesn't matter. Treadmill, indoors, outdoors. I mean, here you have summer all year long, basically. Okay. I run in Montreal in all weather. I won't run when it's icy, but I run in the winter. I run in the summer. I run all year. So, but there's all kinds of ways you can go to a gym. I walked into a Planet Fitness. I've never been in a gym. I walked in, there's a Planet Fitness. I was in Lake over there near where Macy's is. So I was walking around, there's a Planet Fitness. I said, I've never been in a gym. Let me see what it looks like. So I went in, and they gave me the tour with the hard sell. But I saw there's resources there. If you're into gym, there's resources there. They have coaches, and that's all part of the membership apparently. And they have special rooms with different kinds of exercise this, exercise that. Lights, they tell you when to stop, when to start. I mean, it's really gotten very, when I do treadmill, not treadmill, I do use a recumbent bike, more than 5 minutes, I go crazy, so I have to watch something. So I saw a treadmill or a bike with a screen, and the guy was biking, and I saw him, he was biking, and the screen was a path. He was biking somewhere in the world, I don't know where. But he was biking, and it adjusts based on elevation. So if you're running on a path, you're going up a mountain, it will adjust the tension. So very sophisticated. I have a friend in Montreal, he has one of these Peloton treadmills, and he says, I run all over the world. Today in Rome, tomorrow in Paris. It's on the screen. So it makes it, anybody that said that 5 minutes is a short amount of time has never been on a treadmill. So anyway, do anything, and remember always the 3 P's. I call them the 3 P's: patience, perseverance, and perspiration. You have to have patience. It's not going to happen overnight. Nothing's going to change quickly. It takes a long time. My running didn't run till I got up to my mile and my 2 miles. It took a while. You have to be patient, and you have to persevere, and you got to put in the work. It's not going to happen by itself. The same thing with eating healthy. little bit of inspiration. Who inspires me? Let me give you the setup to this little video. In 2021, I ran my first New York Marathon, and this is 4th Avenue in Brooklyn. This is what it looks like, the crowds. 4th Avenue in Brooklyn and 10th Street. It's about 7 miles in, and I see a guy running, and on the back of his jersey it says he's running for Parkinson's research. And that, for me, is a big thing because my father passed away from Parkinson's. And so I figured I gotta go say something to him. So I run up next to him, and around, I see around him there's some other people. He was wearing a blue jersey, and 3 or 4 other runners were wearing the same jersey, but they were white. So I figured he's the captain. So I ran up next to him, and I said, I want to thank you for doing this. And you'll hear it in a minute. My father passed away from Parkinson's. He says, I have Parkinson's. He's running marathon. His name is Bill Bucklew. I only found out later. I didn't know I didn't get his name then, but after the run, I posted on the Facebook page in the group, and I said, I told the story. I said, I don't know who he is. If anybody knows who he is, please tell him that I finished the race for him.
No.
So 2 days later, I get a message from him. His name is Bill Bucklew. He thanks me and how I inspired. I told him here. I told him how he inspired me. He thanks me for stopping by and inspiring him to finish. So, and he says, by the way, they're doing a documentary on me, and the encounter was recorded. He says, I was holding the camera, so you're not going to see us, but you hear us. And he sends it to me, and he's a very, I'll play it.
Thank you for running for Parkinson's. I passed away 5 years ago.
Oh, really? Right. My father had it, I have it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my father passed away last year from it, so it's a big, big thought of mine. Thank you very much for stopping and telling me that. It gave me the inspiration to keep going.
You have to finish
All right, take care. You have a great race. His father passed away 4 years ago from Parkinson's.
I'm a photographer.
That's the name of the I was telling them what an honor it was to run with him. And we've kept in touch. I spoke to him a couple of weeks ago. He's on the left there, Bill Bucklew. He's run 30 full marathons. He got Parkinson's at 40, early onset, which is very rare. And he found out that exercise slows the progression. He's done 30 full marathons. He's an Ironman. He's biked across the United States. He just finished one now. He had a very bad operation. He had to keep the whole bike on a recumbent bike lying down, but they went across the United States to raise awareness for Parkinson's. When I put that request, when I put the comment on the Facebook, so a woman sent a picture. Her name is Kamal Jolka. She lives in Princeton, New Jersey. Look what it says in the back of her jersey. She's standing on the Verrazano Bridge at the start of the marathon. It says, I have Parkinson's and epilepsy. If I can, you can.
Wow.
And I'm in touch with her. She follows all my races. Here's another story, another inspirational guy, and this is my tefillin story. And maybe it's my shlichus because of my running. This happened. I'm running in Montreal, and at the end of a run, I'm in front of the yeshiva in Montreal, and I see a guy across the street, and he's wearing the jersey, the New York City Marathon jersey. And he's an older guy, as you can see. So for me, for a runner, that's an invitation. The guy's wearing a jersey, you gotta go talk to him. So I run across the street, and we talk, we take a selfie. I run with him a little, we exchange contact information, and we remain in contact, we're still in contact. This is 2 years ago. about 2 years ago, July 2022. So notice I'm wearing red, he's wearing the blue jersey, and the counter on the top says 0. We took the same picture just this August now. It's just funny the way he's wearing the red, I'm wearing, and it still says 0 on the top. Now, as a result of that chance meeting, which 10 seconds difference I never would have met him, he was visiting his son in Montreal at the time in July, and he came back for Rosh Hashanah, and I went to blow shofar for him, his wife, and his son. And prior to the race in 2021, I sent him a text the night before, Motzei Shabbos. He starts early because he's officially handicapped. He's broken his neck. He had kidney cancer. He removed one kidney. He has knee problems. He's 78 at the time. Now he's 79. At the time I met him, he was 78, 77. And he runs the New York City Marathon. I mean, talk about no such thing as a cat. So I texted him the night. So he starts early because he has AFib. So he has this thing in his chest that keeps his heart beating. So Motzei Shabbos, I texted him. I said, there's the New York City Marathon is very unique for two things. I mentioned before Fred Lebo, his name was Bishop Leibovich, Holocaust survivor. He's started the New York City Marathon. It's his baby. He started it. So it's been running. It's now 52 years. He passed away. He had brain cancer. But one day, and he's a Holocaust survivor. There's a documentary about him on YouTube. They interview his sister, the one with a sheitel in Borough Park, his brother with a big yarmulke. He wasn't religious, but he saw one year some people standing in the middle of the field, in the middle of the start area, davening. So the next year, he established a tent for a minyan, and it's an official part of the marathon. Wow. The only one in the world except Yeshiva that has a minyan tent, and it's on the map. It says International Minyan Services. Wow. And of course, as we know, Chabad got involved, and there's a lot of filling goes on, especially last year. I was there, it was nonstop. Hundreds and hundreds of people came to put on film before the race. And I arranged last year, and I'm going to Mirza Shem arrange again this year, for the spectators, 2 million people come out during the day. So last year I arranged to have the Bochum go. The boys went, and they put on film, hundreds of people put on film in crowds. So anyway, so that's one thing. The other thing is the reason the New York City Marathon is in November is because the religious Jews went there and said it used to be in September, October. Most years we can't run because it's young. He changed it to November. So those two things. So anyway, so I texted Ron Friedman. I would be very happy if before the race you went to put on film. And he texted me back, what's film? I figured he didn't know the Hebrew term, so I sent him an article from Chabad.org describing film. 6:58 the next morning, I went, I had a wonderful time. I remember thinking to myself, I can go home now. I don't have to run the race. I did what I'm here to do. But what I didn't know is that was the first time I put on film in his life. Wow. At 76. So that's what running has brought me, not just the physical aspect of this. I know there's going to be questions later. Zoshi said there'll be questions later. I don't know what the timing is now. I don't know if I went over or didn't go over. But there's one question that everybody asks me, no matter where I am, and no matter, it's always, and here it is. So I'm going to answer that now so we'll save time for later. That's the question I get. And one time one guy asked me that question in a grocery store. And Ron Friedman told me this, about what I'm about to say. I'm standing in the grocery store, I'm talking to this guy. He says, isn't it bad for your knees? And I said, you see those bags of potatoes, 10 pounds? I was carrying 7.5 of those around 24/7. That's way worse on my knees. But the fact is that the research that says that running is bad for the knees was skewed. They did the research, most of the runners they did the research on were young professional runners who were running 115 miles a week with those long strides and really battering themselves. So they subsequent studies have found that running actually strengthens the knees, and as we age, I don't know what it is in between there, the cartilage or something starts to thin. Exercise and running and walking will strengthen the tendons around there, so it helps with the knees. It helps strengthen the knees, not weaken them. And yes, I have to be careful when I run, so I make sure that I don't heel strike, because that would be bad for the knees. Push the force right up into the knees. Also, I run on the, if you see me running, I'm running in the street, because asphalt is more giving than concrete. And I'll run also in Montreal. We have a mountain. I mean, not like the mountain here. We call it a mountain. It's 700 feet. So that's, a bump here, I guess. But I run up that mountain, and it's hard-packed earth, so it's much easier. So as long as one is careful, exercise, specifically running and walking, will strengthen the knees. So what happened to the pills? Right? What did I do with those pills? Well, this is 2022 at the New York City Marathon. That I kept, and I take it to the marathon finish lines, and I say, look, I have video of 2 years ago that I've done that. And I brought it here today, and I took some mashkin, and I'm going and I want to wish you a Shana Tova, that's coming up to Rosh Hashanah. And it's coming also up to Sukkot, and Simchas Torah, what happens at Simchas Torah, we start reading from the beginning of the Torah. And the first 2 words of the Torah are what? Bereshis, bara, right?
Yeah.
But one Rebbe once said that the word bara, if you pronounce it a little bit differently, you can pronounce it as bari, which means health. So Bereshis, in the beginning, bari, we must be healthy. We must do something. So Chaim, everybody have a sweet new year.
Amen.